Larry Wheels, look at this guy. Just look at his physique alone. Never mind the strength. Does he not look like a hyper responder to everything? Look at him. He probably looks at creatine, puts on muscle. Probably thinks of testosterone, would add size and strength. Coach Greg and I was tagged a number of times. People wanted me to do a response to Larry Wheels' video where he describes how people should be taking PEDs. He has a new theory on how you can get the gains with lower doses, and so I was asked to critique his information. And props to Larry Wheels for telling people you don't need steroids, PEDs, to gain strength. He says at the start of the video, if you are in fact natural, stay natural. However, if you're abusing PEDs, perhaps there's a way to lower the doses and still get the gains. Is it too good to be true? Well, stay tuned to find out, and spoiler, unfortunately, kinda is.
I'm trying to encourage a healthier approach. These for those who already do. Guys, if you don't already use PEDs, please do not. You don't need PEDs to get stronger.
And so Larry, knowing it's not healthy to use PEDs, is saying, I'm trying to encourage a healthier approach. PED use is not healthy, but clearly if you do lower doses rather than higher ones, it's a lot healthier. Not healthy, don't get me wrong, not healthy, but healthier than using more abusive doses.
I'm not going to name the compound specifically because I do fear that people watching this, not everyone, but some, will hear the compounds, call their drug dealer and say, I want this and that.
I don't think it's going to make a lick of difference. I'd rather have people being transparent, saying what they're actually doing, being honest about it, than saying, I'm taking these things, took those things, but I don't want to mention them. People that are actually going to take it, they're going to go and research and find out anyway. So why not just say, hey, guys, I abused test, tren, and anadrol specifically quite often in the past. And so I can't knock on Larry Wheels for this. He's doing his best, doing his part to try and curtail the use of PEDs.
I'd run a cycle of several compounds. So the first 2 weeks are okay, but each week that you're on, your body is enduring more and more stress.
And so this is 100% true, and I have to get into a lot of details here. When you use steroids, for example, testosterone, the higher the dose, the greater results are, up to a point. There's something called the law of diminished returns. For example, 500 milligrams of test might offer double the gains of 250. But if you double it to 1,000, you're not going to get double the gains of 500. And if you continue to increase that dose, there is going to be a ceiling effect, of which anything more than that, it's not going to offer a lick of benefit. And if you keep increasing that dose, it will in fact make you worse. And so a study was done, showed 600 milligrams of testosterone more beneficial than 300. 1,200 probably more beneficial than 600. But let's say you take 10,000. Maybe you die, not much benefit if you're dead. And in my own experience in the past, I kept pushing the envelope. Used tren, of which Larry has used in the past. Very good for strength, 3 times as strong as testosterone. And what does that mean? It means that 1/3 the dose of testosterone, I can gain the same amount of lean muscle tissue or strength as that of taking test. So if I'm taking 200 milligrams of tren, I gain the same amount of size and strength as if I'd taken 600 milligrams of test. But that's just me. I respond highly favorably to tren, but up to a certain point. And you're thinking, that's not possible. More tren, more gains. When I took 700 milligrams of tren, couldn't sleep anymore. If you're not sleeping, you're not recovering, and so you're not able to train with the intensity that you need. And so if you abuse PEDs too much, you're actually going to see a drop in performance. Most people just assume the more you take, the bigger you get, and if you take enough, you end up as Big Ramy. It's not the case. You need the genetics. If you don't have the genetics, you're not getting the size. 99.9% of the population on all the PEDs in the world will never be as big as Ronnie Coleman was when he was natural. 100% natural Ronnie, more impressive than 99.9% of PED users. It's in his genes. The guy was born to be a freak of nature bodybuilder.
Under the guidance of a coach, I was advised to use testosterone just a bit higher than a TRT dose weekly for the entire prep.
And so for his current 8 to 12 week cycle, rather than using higher doses of tren, test, anadrol, he used only testosterone. And at what dose? Slightly higher than Hrt levels. And so what are HRT levels? Well, I'm on 140 milligrams of testosterone a week, and I've coached or spoken to hundreds of competitors, athletes who are on HRT. The lowest HRT dose I've ever seen from anyone, 60 milligrams. The highest, 400. But 400, that's not HRT. That is a cycle. And if you look at their blood work, when you're at 1500 nanograms per deciliter, it's not HRT. To me, HRT is something that the doctor prescribes that allows you to be within the normal reference range. If you're above or outside the reference range, you're not on HRT. You're on super physiological HRT. HRT is hormone replacement. And so typically most people on HRT are going to be somewhere between 100 and 200 milligrams a week. Some outliers, maybe 1 in 100, they need more than 200, perhaps 250. And some, they get by with less than 100. They're on 100 milligrams a week, they're above 1,000 nanograms per deciliter. Their body just converts it really well. Sometimes smaller individuals, they need lower doses, larger individuals, higher doses. And so when Larry Wheels says his coach advised him to take slightly higher than HRT doses, to me, slightly higher than an HRT dose of 100 to perhaps 200, 250, slightly higher, probably around 300 to 400 milligrams a week. That would be slightly higher than HRT. Smaller than a cycle, most people doing testosterone cycles probably doing 400, 500, 600, 700 milligrams. And so slightly higher than HRT, probably 300 to 400.
So when my coach told me you can reach your all-time best with just 5 days as opposed to the usual 8 to 12 weeks that I would use these compounds for, I was a bit skeptical.
You're going to get just as much of a result if you do that as if you blast for 8 to 12 weeks. I don't think so. Unless, of course, you're abusing steroids to such an extent that, as in my previous example, when I described using 700 milligrams of tren, that you're above what you can handle. If you're taking so much gear that you feel miserable, you feel shitty, you can't sleep, you're not recovering, you're up all night, sweating and so on, then yeah. If you abuse PDs to that extent, then lowering the dose, you'll actually get more of it. And at that point, less is more. But is it really 300 to 400 milligrams of test for 8 weeks and 5 days of other compounds? And you're going to set PRs, records, better than anyone else in the world? No, it's not that good. I wish I could say that you only need 300, 400 milligrams of test to set lifetime PRs, that everyone that's watching this right now, just stop taking tren, anadrol, anavar, stop all the other compounds, just take low doses of tren and for 5 days add in the other stuff and you're going to set all your PRs. It's not true. And so imagine the strength Larry would have if he doubled this test dose, perhaps 600, 700 milligrams of test, and rather than using anadrol, anavar, halo, and so on for 5 days, use it for 10. You don't think he would get stronger if he raised his testosterone dose to a little bit higher? And instead of doing the other compounds for 5 days, he did them for 10? Really think of it. Do you really think that that is all you need? That is the peak that you can get out of your body? 5 days with extra compounds. Sorry, it doesn't work like that. Sometimes these other compounds can take several days just to kick in to maximize. Your blood serum concentrations for testosterone and enthate, for example, takes approximately 6 weeks to achieve that. And so my personal belief is there's somewhere in the middle. Somewhere in the middle of using crazy abusive doses, as Larry has done and I have done in the past, and doing just slightly above HRT levels, and then adding in those other compounds for 5 days. Somewhere in the middle. Perhaps double what Larry's saying. Perhaps it's 600 to 800 milligrams of test, and instead of 5 days, it's 10 days. Most likely, what I tell most people is you're probably going to get the most out of your training if you can do a 12 to 16 week cycle. The first 8 weeks, you can do so at a very low dose, as Larry has suggested. Higher than HRT doses, perhaps 600 milligrams of test a week. As you know, there are in fact studies that have done 600 in comparison to 300, 150, and so on milligrams of test a week. And those taking 600 milligrams made significantly more gains in size and strength than those taking 300. So stands to reason, if you did 8 weeks at 600 milligrams, you're going to put on more strength on your deadlift than if you did 300 for 8 weeks. And then added in a few things for 5 days. Don't think so. After the first 8 weeks of doing tests at, say, 600 milligrams a week, you can then add other compounds. You don't want to take tren for 16 weeks, too long. And with tren, more is better, but to a point. Some people, they can't handle tren. makes them have horrible mood swings. They get angry, emotional, irritable, they can't sleep, sweats, insomnia, tren cough, and so on. You're taking too much. If you're taking 700 milligrams a week, do you really think that you wouldn't have gained anything from 350? And if you've never taken tren ever in your life, why are you starting with 300, 400, 500 milligrams? If you literally took 100 milligrams of tren a week, it's 3 times stronger than test. That's like adding in 300 milligrams of test a week into your cycle. So if you're taking 600 milligrams of test a week and you add in 200 milligrams of tren per week, you've essentially doubled the strength of your cycle. Doubled it. And you've literally only added in 200 milligrams, yet it's literally just as strong as the test that you're using. And so now you have 2 compounds, test working for you and tren. And if you don't think you'll get stronger, if you train like this, follow a guided program for your coach for 16 weeks, in comparison to 8 weeks where you only add in tren, anadrol, and so on for the last 5 days, then you have to be joking. What kind of coach can't get more out of your training in 16 weeks of a cycle than they can out of 8 weeks out of a tiny cycle? And we haven't even spoken about orals. My personal favorite oral, Anavar. And I'm not saying that anyone to ever take this. As Larry said at the start of his video, not a doctor, not saying anyone should ever do any of this. This is strictly for educational purposes. I'm just saying what would happen in the real world if someone were to do this. Of course, if it's illegal in your country, by all means, do not listen or do any of this. Only do so if it's legal in your country and with the advice of your doctor. And I'm not a freaking doctor. I'm not advising you to do anything. So let me get that straight. If you added in Anavar at the end of this cycle, do you not think you would be even stronger? And according to Larry, you added in for 5 days. The last 5 days, you're going to get all this out of it. What if you did it for the last 4 weeks? You took 600 milligrams of test for 8 weeks, then added in 200 milligrams of tren for the last 8 weeks, and the final 4 weeks you added in 25 to 50 milligrams of Anavar. Do you not think you're going to be stronger than the person who took 300 or 400 milligrams of test for 8 weeks and add in a little bit of orals and so on the last 5 days? Really think about it. And so I'm giving you the honest advice. I don't want you to abuse PDs, but I also don't want to mislead you, trick you, misinform you. When I was a kid, when I was in my teens, I was told steroids don't work. It's a shortcut, but if you train hard, you can get just as big as you can if you take steroids. I was a kid, believed it, didn't know, went to university, started researching it, was like, it's BS, steroids work. I'm looking at the guy, he's freaking kicking my ass because he took steroids. There's no way I can just outwork them, but I tried my best, trained harder than last time for decades. Became a national champion natural. Competed powerlifting, broke records, but still never got an IPB Pro card. And I had amazing genetics. I was beating out people on steroids when I was in fact natural. Decided I'm gonna take PDs. Took them, got an IPB Pro card, put 100 pounds on my bench 3 months. They don't work? Are you kidding me? Of course they work. And so I'm not going to bullshit you. I'm not going to BS you and say, if you just do 300, 400 milligrams of test, you're going to get the same kind of gains as if you use 3 compounds, including an oral.
In only 5 days, you're not experiencing any side effects. You're not getting acne, insomnia, mood swings. I'm just thinking of the worst ones that come to mind when you take various really potent steroids.
Exactly. And so the reason Larry was able to make this much gains on such low doses is because he was on such abusive doses that he was getting negative side effects from what he was taking. And so you've heard it. When I took tren at 700, I couldn't sleep. But at 200, I can sleep. I can get the gains. Low doses of tren, I don't get all those crappy unwanted side effects, but I still get the benefit of taking something that is 3 times strong as testosterone.
And now I'm thinking, okay, wow, I wish I knew I could do it this way a decade ago.
And so what's important to also note is when you're earlier in your lifting career and you're just starting to get on PDs, the lowest dose that allows for results is what you do. But most oftentimes when people first start taking PDs, they're not looking for small gains. They're like, I've had enough. I want to now be the freak. And so oftentimes people are doing their first cycles. They're doing test and tren first cycle. Why? You're going to make so many gains from just using test. You don't need the tren. Tren shouldn't even be done on your second cycle. It's something for more advanced lifters. Once you can no longer make gains on just test and perhaps Mastrone, Primo, EQ, Deca that you might have added in on second, third, and fourth cycles, once you can no longer make the gains on those cycles, then you have to incorporate the stronger, harsher, more dangerous compounds. And so it's important to start small, titrate up year after year. After you get bigger, badder, and are further above your genetic limit, that is the time when you need to start using Tren.
And I have several times gone on a program, and then I always feel so beat up, CNS fatigue, drained,
One thing people don't know is when you're abusing PDs at the highest extent, you feel like garbage. I felt like shit when I was taking my highest doses. I was strong, looked amazing, but felt like garbage on the inside. But I get it. If you're like me and you're trying to get a pro card, you're trying to win a professional bodybuilding show, break world records and so on, you kind of have to do these things or you're probably not going to be the best athlete that you could be in the entire world. Do the best you can natural. Stay natural as long as humanly possible. And don't take PDs as a teenager, early 20s. Wait till you're older. You might grow up and have regrets. You can see Larry Wheels clearly wishes he had done lower doses in his past. Probably started and thought, well, I'm going to blast, I'm going to take all this stuff. I want to be super strong. And of course it worked. But once your body gets used to those higher doses, you then need even higher doses to make gains. And just like you get newbie gains when you go in the gym, you get newbie steroid gains when you take steroids. Little bit of steroids when you're 100% natural, mind-blowing. But after your body gets used to it, you need more and more and more to get any results at all.
There was a significant change in how full I was and in my body composition, as if I had been on for weeks. I was really shocked at how quickly everything worked.
And I gotta say, I'm so happy that Larry made this video as it allows me the opportunity to respond and add to the information he's provided. And so he said in 5 days, even though it's only 5 days, he looked significantly bigger. He could feel it. He looked like he had more muscle and so on. And absolutely, many people say, oh, steroids, they don't even kick in for 2 or 3 weeks. Most kick in within hours if they're orals and or a few days if they're injectables. Even longer ester steroids like Test and Entate, couple days, you're certainly going to be feeling these effects. And if you don't feel them, doesn't mean it's not doing anything for you. Case in point, natural supplements. For example, creatine, turkesterone, L-citrulline, beta-alanine. Hyper-responders such as myself took turkesterone. Wow, making a significant difference in my training. I can feel it working. Other people, they said, yeah, I think it works, but it's probably the placebo effect. And yes, the placebo effect is in fact real. If you think, believe, especially if you strongly believe something's going to work, it's probably going to make a difference in your training because it affects the mind. And so if you're taking Test, Tren, Anavar, steroids, SARMs, and you believe they're going to work, there is, of course, going to be a placebo effect that adds on to the fact that those products are also going to build muscle. So the placebo effect plus the effect of the drug, that equals the actual results that you're going to get. And with any drug, no matter how good it is, doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone. For example, if 1,000 people were given 700 milligrams of Tren a day, trust me, not all 1,000 people would be making gains. Some would literally lose muscle. Why? Because they couldn't sleep, they couldn't train, they'd feel like garbage, they'd feel horrible. Some would end up in a hospital. How much muscle are you going to put on if you're laying in a hospital bed? And with other drugs, banned PDs, commonly used in bodybuilding to help people burn fat, have more energy, more recovery, GW501516, Cardarine. Done a video of this on the past. One of my favorite fat burning drugs that I've used when doing bodybuilding competitions. Did a survey, asked 50,000 people who watch Coach Greg, what do you think of Cardarine? Was it effective? What did it do? Well, 80% they said, well, they've never taken it, which makes sense. But the remaining 20%, so 10,000 people that took it, about 25% said they noticed nothing, that it made no difference at all, that it was ineffective. Was it really ineffective, or did you just not notice it? Does everyone notice that they have more stamina doing cardio? Is it 100% noticeable? Of course not. And 25% said, yeah, it worked a bit, but probably just a placebo. Maybe it was a placebo, maybe it was half placebo and half the Cardarine itself. And the other 50%, about half the respondents, they said, yeah, it works. Larry Wheels, look at this guy. Just look at his physique alone. Never mind the strength. Does he not look like a hyper responder to everything? Look at him. He probably looks at creatine, puts on muscle. Probably thinks of testosterone would add size and strength. The guy is a phenom. And so even with 300 or 400 milligrams of test a week, he's still deadlifting 930. Would you? Would you? Do you think that you could take every drug in the entire world and ever deadlift 930 pounds for one rep, let alone 3? I tried. I could never deadlift 800. Yet Larry's doing 930 on a little bit higher dose than testosterone. And so although it's great that he's giving out this message, that he's explaining to people that you can do things on really low doses, for the most part, the reality is if you up the dose, you're probably going to get greater results up to a certain point when you get to that ceiling effect. And if you keep pushing beyond that, you're actually going to get worse results. Case in point, Larry Wheels. And also, as Larry describes in this video, one of the reasons why he did worse back in the past on higher levels of drugs is because he would try to set PRs all the time. He was lifting too hard, going harder than last time, thinking, well, I'm on all these drugs, I can just go for 1 rep maxes, PRs, do strength shows, post YouTube videos showing you how strong I am day after day. His body beat up. And so when he get to a competition, he was tired, drained from taking too many PDs. But is it the fact that the drug doses were too high? Or is it the fact that he was pushing himself too hard, training too hard with the knowledge that he was on higher doses? And so imagine if back in the day he had done those higher doses, but had held back a little bit, had not pushed himself too far, had not lifted that rock, tore his bicep, perhaps he was sore, never needed to train as hard that day. And so remember, your body does have limits, and when you're on PDs, the mind, the body, it thinks it's invincible. And when you're young, nothing can hurt me. I'm going to go balls to the wall every single day, lifting PRs, maxes, and impressing the world. Hopefully this video helped. Hopefully the information is of use to you. As Larry said, perhaps Derek can explain more of the science. It'd be great to hear his point of view as well. Ending it here. And as always, harder than last time supplements, if you're looking to stay natural, testosterone, creatine, all kinds of stuff, click the link in the description. Also, free training program. Click the link. Watch the bloops. Subscribe, click the bell button, comment for the algorithm. Get my freaking cookbook, the training book, coaching plans by me and my team, the Circle Diet book, phone consults. And until next time, I am out.